Alright, so in today's Subnautica video, we're going to be looking at a very interesting new vehicle mod, and I say interesting because of how similar it looks to another vehicle mod, but we're going to go over all that in this video. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so this vehicle mod here is called the Atlantic Explorer vehicle mod, and I'm already knowing what y'all are saying. Alright, anybody who's, seen the other mod, we all know that this mod looks really similar, maybe even identical to the Abyss Submarine mod, okay? That's been established, okay? Because that's the first thing I thought when I first saw this mod on Next. It is a little bit different in quite a few ways, actually, than the Abyss. And we're actually gonna look at all that. But look at the size of the Atlantic Explorer compared to the Sea Moth. Like, it's not that much bigger than the Sea Moth, which is kind of crazy, because this doesn't look like a smaller submarine. Like, if you saw it in a picture, you would think this is a larger deep sea submarine, but it's not the case, which is interesting. As far as exterior detailing goes, it's a nice detailed submarine. It's got that sort of rundown look that the Abyss Submarine also has, because it's got like these little, like where the paint's like sort of fading right here, or like maybe like where it's rusting, etc. You get the idea. It says Atlantic, can't speak. It says Atlantic Explorer on the side. Gosh, can't speak. Got a little, what is this, like an oxygen tank on the side? There's two. There's one on this side and one on the other side. And then we have some really tiny fans, I guess, to sort of help propel the submarine forward, backwards. And then you got some vertically placed to help it go up and down. And then you have the front of the submarine, which has all these lights on it that are all like really lit up already. Even though I'm not sure if the lights are like that all the time, or if they're only like that when the lights are on. But we'll see when we get there. And I would also like to point out that the front and back of the submarine look very similar to one another. So this is the front of the submarine right here. And then we head over to the back of the submarine. It looks dang near the same. The only difference back here is this like big old camera right here. It looks like a big old like film camera, to be honest. So yeah, this big old camera on the very bottom, that's how you can differentiate, whether you're looking at the back of the submarine or the front of the submarine. But I just thought it's kind of interesting that it looks similar on both sides, front and back. And then the top of the submarine, let's look at the top. Okay, so we have one storage module, one on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side where we access our upgrades, right here. I need to get the different depth modules. I'll be right back. Can we enter the submarine to the bottom? We cannot. So this hatch down here is actually just for show. Interesting. So we got one upgrade module, we got an upgrade module area, and then we have one storage area, and then we can only enter the submarine through the top. And I believe that's about everything as far as like the exterior of the submarine goes. Again, it's a smaller submarine. Didn't really take us that long to look at everything on the outside. So yeah, let's head on the inside and see what's on the inside. Okay, so on the inside, we just get teleported straight into the submarine. We got like two joysticks, one to the left and one to the right, but you can't walk around in the submarine. It just teleports you straight in. So as you would imagine, the submarine appears to be like pretty beefy, which is why it's a bit slower, just like the Abyss is. And speaking of the Abyss, right after I get done looking at the interior of this submarine, we're gonna compare the two so we can see all the different differences. The cockpit is very narrow, I will say that. It said it had cameras, but I'm pushing like the buttons to access the cameras and nothing's happening. So I don't know if that's like a glitch on my end, or if the cameras just haven't been implemented yet, or what. The cockpit is very narrow, kind of hard to see out of, especially with all the like clutter in front of the screen, because you got the two joysticks on the left and right hand side. You can see the outline of the interior of the submarine, and then you have these like big old bars, and then the lights. It's just a lot. It's a lot to look at in front of you while you're trying to actually look out and see what's in front of you in the environment. So I'm sure I know somebody out there finds this to be distracting, and it's probably not ideal. Now that we've looked at the Atlantic Explorer on its own, let's look at the Abyss, because I know everybody compares this thing to the Abyss, because I ain't even gonna lie, I did too, because that's the first thing I thought of when I saw it. So let's look at the differences and see how different they both actually are. Now, first glance, we can already see the main difference between these two submarines is going to be in size. This is going to help differentiate the two submarines from one another. So there's actually a lot of differences to look at here. So I would consider the Atlantic Explorer to be sort of like the little brother of the Abyss Submarine. The Abyss does not have those same like small fans on the side like that we see here, like these little silver fans that are on the sides and the ones that go vertically. These are not on the Abyss. The only fan that we see on the Abyss is this one right here. And then we have the big old fan / engine in the back, which is a fat difference, from the Atlantic Explorer, because the Atlantic Explorer actually doesn't have an engine on the back. On the back of the submarine, it's just like, like another compartment for somebody else to see out of. Now, the front of these submarines does look very similar, especially with like the bars. So we see like this, it looks like a freaking football helmet. I ain't even gonna lie to you, on both these submarines. But we got the bars right here. We can see it looks virtually identical to the one on the Abyss, except for like there's no like hole right there. So similarity there, but the lights are also different because the Abyss has like these big old flashlights, like actual flashlights and spotlights, where there's 5 lights on the Abyss. And on the Atlantic Explorer, there are 6 lights. And if you want to count total lights, then there are 12 lights on the Atlantic Explorer, because there's, 6 lights on the front and then 6 lights on the back. The Abyss does not have lights on the back, it only has lights on the front. And the lights also look different, so another difference there. Look at the top of these submarines, it's also a little bit different because the Abyss has like some, what would you call these, like patterns? Like white patterns on the top. The Atlantic Explorer just has that like regular solid color. On the Abyss, there are 2 grills at the back where the engine is. It says engine 1, engine 2, and there's 2 separate grills for each engine. On the Atlantic Explorer, there's only 1, and it's a square. I would also like to say the colors of these submarines is also a little bit different as well, because the Atlantic Explorer, they have like a similar color, but the Atlantic Explorer sort of has like a darker color, I feel like. The Abyss's color is a little bit brighter than the Atlantic Explorer. Gosh, that's like a tongue twister for me to say. So if we look at the inside of the Atlantic Explorer, we have the walls have this nice like sort of hex texture to them, which is kind of nice and appreciated, attention to detail. And then we have these valves in here. Now again, I'm in ghost mode, which is the only reason we can actually see what's on the inside, because it won't like let you walk around on the inside of the submarine, even though it does kind of look like you'd be able to, but it is what it is. And then these are the oxygen tanks, I'm assuming. These blue things, these are the oxygen tanks, I'd like to assume. So the Atlantic Explorer oxygen tanks are actually on the inside of the submarine as opposed to being on the outside, so that's cool. Valves, and then we head over to the control seat over here. We have a whole bunch of switches. We got the switches, we have like the joysticks to, move the submarine around, more switches to the right, so switches to the left and right, and then the seat is right here, looks the same as the ones in the back. Now, moving to the inside of the Abyss submarine, the walls are a different texture, they just have like a regular smooth, sort of like metallic texture. So there's a difference there, and then they also have the same valves, they each have, although I think the Abyss has 3. Yeah, the Atlantic Explorer has 2 valves, the Abyss has 3. Both of these submarines have hatches on the roof. We have a hatch right here, and then there's also one on the bottom, so similarity there. Upgrade panel for the submarine is on the inside, which is a difference from the Atlantic Explorer, because the Atlantic Explorer upgrades are on the outside of the submarine. And major difference that I haven't mentioned somehow already is the fact that you can walk around on the inside of the Abyss submarine, because this is a larger submarine, and the hatches are also in different places, because the bottom hatch for the Atlantic Explorer is sort of like dead center in the middle of the submarine, but for the Abyss, this one is actually towards the back, and you can use it, so keep that in mind. So Mark 1 depth module for the Abyss increased the max crush depth to 900 meters. Mark 2 depth module increased it to 1200 meters. Mark 3 increased it to 1500 meters. So remember, base depth for the Atlantic Explorer is 400 meters. We put 1 in, 1200 meters, 2200 meters, 3700 meters. So despite the Atlantic Explorer being a smaller submarine, it can actually go way, way deeper underwater than the Abyss submarine. And I also would like to point out that I think the reason, like according to the mod creator, that these submarines look so similar is because they're both based off of the same movie, which is the Abyss movie, and they're based off of a submarine from that movie, which is why these submarines both look, so similar, because they're based off of the same submarine from the same movie. But we can see, despite these submarines having a similar appearance at a first glance, they're very different in quite a bit of ways, size, the fact that you can walk around on the interior of one. But yeah, overall the Atlantic Explorer is a nice submarine, nice new submarine. Because it looks really similar to the Abyss submarine, a lot of people are gonna see this mod and they're probably gonna think, oh well, this is just like a clone of the Abyss submarine, so why don't I just use the Abyss, or why don't I keep the Abyss that I already have, And there's not that much reason to use aside from depth, if you want to go like really, really deep with the Atlantic Explorer, that's the primary reason you'd probably use it over the Abyss submarine. But for most people, they're probably just going to keep using the Abyss or use the Abyss instead because of how similar they look. If the Atlantic Explorer just looked like a little bit different, maybe even like a different color, that would have helped a lot. Maybe like take the bars off or something, just make it look significantly different than the Abyss submarine. And I think that would have attracted, well, that would keep a lot more people from being deterred from using the actual mod. Because first impressions are everything when you're looking at mods. And if you're instantly turned off by a mod simply by how it looks, then you're probably not going to want to download it. But yeah, despite that, still a really cool mod. The color and the cockpit, I think those are my two main criticisms of the submarine. The color, because of how similar it looks to the Abyss Submarine, you know, it needs to have some key difference that somebody can look at through a picture and be like, okay, yeah, this they can instantly identify it and separate it from the other submarine. You know, that's one thing. It needs like a feature or something like that. It doesn't even have to be like a color. It could be like an exterior feature, something of that nature. The size would be one thing, but you would have to download the mod first to actually see that. And then the second thing is the cockpit. The cockpit is a little too cluttered in my opinion, because it's more cluttered than the Abyss cockpit, and the Abyss cockpit is already like, you know, pretty cluttered as is. It has the bars, it has the lights, it has the big old camera in the middle, at the like bottom middle, and then you can also see like the inside of the submarine as well. So it's just like a lot to look at. But yeah, other than that, that is about all I had for y'all. Thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.